Good morning everyone and welcome to the first ever live webinar from 30 Foot Drop. Yeah, wow, it's finally here, it's happening. This is amazing. Look, I hope you guys really enjoy this. If you've got any feedback or anything like that, please go to 30footdrop.com.au/live and join the conversation there. Unfortunately, I don't have the resources to monitor multiple channels, so that is the one channel that I'll be monitoring whilst I'm live. If you put questions and other queries or feedback up on other channels, I will eventually get to them. You just won't have the instant feedback. So look, without further ado, let's get started. So, tapping in part 1 out of 6. Why employ people with impairment? So, 30 Foot Drop acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise the continuing connections to land, waters, and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures, to elders both past and present. You must always remember that under the concrete and asphalt, this land is, was, and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. We'd also like to acknowledge the Department of Communities, Disability Services for funding this and many other initiatives. Without their support, so many projects such as Two Wise Monkeys would never actually see the light of day and would be so much poorer as a community for it. So this workshop is part of the Realities and Advantages of Access and Inclusion Grant awarded to 30 Foot Drop as part of the Information Linkages and Capacity Building Grants of 2018 to 2019. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have the resources to monitor a whole load of channels during this live stream. So if you want to ask any questions or interact with me, please head to 30footdrop.com.au/live and use the chat box there. We'll be covering a lot of information in a short amount of time. So we recommend that attendees take actions to minimise your distractions. So for example, put your phones on silent, or maybe just take a little bit of time out of your day to fully absorb what we're going through, because we're going to go through some pretty amazing stuff, and it's really, really well worth business owners and others to really try and take it in. We're also recording this session, and we'll be posting it live, or posting it to our social media channels. So if you want to review the content in here, or go back and list any answers or questions that I have, look, please make sure that you go. It'll be in our Vimeo library. We'll also upload it to our YouTube channel. During this session today, we'll actually be referencing research that has been done and other information. All these sources are available on the 30 Foot Drop Digital Resource Library. You can find them in the 30 Foot Drop webpage under Solutions and Resources. Also, at the end of our webinar, we've got a short survey that we would really appreciate you filling out. So please take the time to fill it out, because we can't improve without your feedback. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ben Aldridge. I am Managing Director of 30 Foot Drop, and I am See No Evil. I am your wise monkey for today. I'm a C5-6 quadriplegic, and I started 30 Foot Drop about 5 years ago now, give or take, and the inspiration behind it was I broke my neck at the ripe old age of 22, and at the time I knew absolutely nothing about disability. And as time's gone on, I've learnt more and more, and after a while I started to get really, really frustrated about the ignorance in society, and started to get quite angry about it, until one day I had a light bulb moment. I suddenly realised that, hey, I knew nothing about disability when I was young, or before I had my accident. Why is that? Well, it's because nobody's teaching it. So how can I get angry at people for not knowing something that they've never been taught? So that's why I started 30 Foot Drop, and it has been an amazing ride ever since. As I said, I am See No Evil. Okay, I'm a quadriplegic. I don't have full control over a fair whack of my body, and it's very obvious that I have an impairment or disability of some sort. So I am See No Evil, because by the end of our sessions, I like to think that you guys will no longer see any evil about disability. The other wise monkey is Lisa. She will be presenting some of these webinars as well. and she is hear no evil. Lisa was diagnosed with dyslexia at an early age, and is living proof that a impairment or disability does not need to be visible in order to have an effect on your life. And in fact, you don't even know that she does until she shares it with people. And that is why she is hear no evil. But wait, isn't there traditionally 3 monkeys in the story? The 3 wise monkeys? Who's the 3rd monkey? Who's that going to be? Well, ladies and gentlemen, by the end of the day, you will be a wise monkey. You will understand you'll understand slightly more about disabilities and impairment. And in this case, why employing people with impairment is a great thing for your bottom line as a business. So you will be speak no evil. You'll leave this webinar today with the extra information and will speak no evil about disability. So, how are we going to get you started on the path of the wise monkey? I have freshly printed notes, which of course are harder to turn than I anticipated. There we are. Well, there's a lot to learn about people with impairment and the opportunities that they represent to employers, and how they make amazing employees. So first up, we're going to examine and bust some myths. Okay, these are the common myths around employing somebody with an impairment. Then, after that little mythbuster session, we're going to get down to brass tacks and look at the subsidies available when employing someone with an impairment and how you can access them. And the final subject is workplace modifications and how to access funding for these. To finish off, we'll do an open forum session where I will answer any questions that you have. It doesn't have to be about the subject that's on today, okay? And we do this because it is part of our teaching method. 30-foot drop, we are all about educating the community through open, honest conversations, okay? So feel free to ask any question. There are none off limit, okay? In fact, if you can ask me a question that I don't know or I have never heard before, and it isn't overly rude, then I will make sure you get a t-shirt. The new 30-foot drop monkey t-shirts are here, and they look good. So you will notice that there is very little written content on the slides today. That's because you're here to interact with me, the presenter, okay? And in order to facilitate this, I once again really encourage you to head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live so that you can chat with me live there. Now, before we get started into the actual content of today, I would like to reduce some confusion and to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I just thought I would review some terminology to make sure that you understand what it is I'm talking about. So first up, we have the difference between disability and impairment. Okay? An impairment is an injury, illness, or congenital condition that causes or is likely to cause a loss or difference of psychological or psychosocial function. In short, an impairment is your medical diagnosis. Okay? In my case, my impairment is that I'm a C5 quadriplegic with post-traumatic stress in remission. That is my impairment. A disability, on the other hand, is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on an equal level with others due to social and environmental barriers. It is, as the word implies, something that will make you unable to access or participate in something. Okay? It is a barrier of some sort. So, for example, stairs disable me from being able to access a business. Round door handles disable me from being able to open a door. My impairment has nothing to do with those particular disabilities. So hopefully that's made sense to everybody, and we're going to move on to the next definition. And that is the difference between access and inclusion. Often access and inclusion, when people are talking about it, it all gets lumped together in one sentence or one big word. People think it all means the same thing, but it doesn't. They're actually two different things completely. Okay, so first up is access. Access refers to the removal or reduction of barriers, both physical and attitudinal, to participation in the activities and functions of a community. Easily assessed through checklists and measurements. There are standards out there, and as a result, so many businesses tend to just only focus on the access side of things because it's an easy win. But it's really only half of the equation. The other half is inclusion. Inclusion is a psychological state of being, and it's the process whereby every person, irrespective of age, disability, gender, religion, sexual preference, or nationality, who wishes to, can participate fully in all aspects of an activity or service in the same way as any other member of the community. I really hope that's made sense to everybody. I don't see any questions coming up in the question box, so I assume that it does. So without further ado, let's dive into the subject for today and start having a look at the myths and reality of employing people with impairment. So let's have a look at the myths and realities that exist when employing people with impairment. Now these myths, they're not just something that I've plucked out of the ether. They're not just random statements, okay? These are actually 7 reoccurring reasons for not employing people with impairment from studies all over the world, okay? All of those studies that you've seen come up on the bottom of the slide there, those are all available through the 30-foot drop resource library, okay? They are all there and they all point towards the same things. Okay, so these are 7 reoccurring statements. Now, these may not apply to everybody, okay? But I bet you'll find 1 or 2 that you're like, I never really thought about that. So, let's dive right in. Myth 1, people with impairments need expensive modifications in order to be a productive employee, okay? The reality is that impairments are like people. Every single impairment is unique. And not everybody with an impairment needs modifications in order to work, okay? My advice, okay, is to actually ask any potential employees and find out whether they need it, okay? Now, I'll readily admit, okay, that getting adaptations for impairments are expensive. Wheelchairs can easily cost $20,000. Vehicles can cost in the 6 figures by the time you add in all the modifications. But the problem is that most employers don't really think about this because 9 times out of 10, we already have it, okay? My employer is not going to need to pay for my wheelchair. My employer is not going to need to buy me the car. I already have these things, okay? This is because we already have them and we already require them for day-to-day use. And if an employee with an impairment does need a modification, okay, there are often easy and inexpensive ways of doing it. There's a good chance this isn't the first time that this particular barrier has actually been come across by somebody with impairment. And they will probably know a way to work around it that is easy, inexpensive, and very non-labour intensive. And finally, if an expensive modification is required, then there is actually funding available, which we will cover later in this session through Job Access. Okay, amazing people, it's an amazing service. Please stay tuned to learn more about that later. Let's move on to myth 2. Myth 2, people with impairments are frequently absent from work. Okay, look, this really could not be further from the truth. In fact, the truth is, it's completely opposite. Okay, according to the Disability Investment Group, in a study that they did called The Way Forward, a new disability policy framework for Australia, 2009, 86% of employees with an impairment had the same or superior attendance rate when compared to other workers. Okay, that's amazing. Further to that, these studies also show that they have a reduced turnover rate. Less staff turnover means less onboarding costs for business, okay? And this leads to reduced costs. leads to more productivity because your employees, you're not cycling through them and having to retrain them. Okay, it is a good thing for employers. But why is this the case? Look, the unemployment rate for people with impairment is on average twice the rest of society, okay, which is huge. It will also take on average double the number of job applications that they will have to put in before actually landing a job. With one particular friend of mine actually applying for 183 positions before actually getting an interview and landing a job. 183. Okay? She was not applying to be a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. Okay? These were entry-level jobs, yet nobody was willing to give her a go. Due to the difficulty of actually getting the employment, people with impairment, okay, people like myself, we actually see employment as a privilege, not a right, okay? And we will actually go the extra mile to retain that employment. So in conclusion, for myth 2, it is just completely untrue, okay? So let's move on to myth 3. People with impairment are only suited to unskilled work. Massively untrue. Okay, there is such a range of skills, talents, and abilities. Okay, we are like anybody else in society. There are things that we are good at, there are things that we are not so good at. Okay, we have the skills. To the point where the Australian Bureau of Statistics, they in 2012 reported that, okay, people with impairment who are employed, almost 20% of them work as professionals. 14.1% of them work as clerical and administrative workers. 15% as techies or trades. Over 10% run their own business, such as myself. And about a third of these people work from home. Okay? That is a massively wide range of different skills and abilities and employment pathways. Myth 4, and this one always makes me laugh. My workers' compensation premiums and safety incidence rates will go up if I employ somebody with an impairment. Oh God, not true, not true. Look, in most cases, sorry, not in most cases, I was reading the wrong paragraph there. Studies have shown that when, I'm reading the wrong one again. My God, I'm doing really well today, aren't I? Employing someone with an impairment does not affect your premiums. Insurance underwriters look at your incidence history and workers' compensation history. They don't care about the number of people with impairment employed, okay? So your insurance rate is not employed. Further to that, okay, these same studies have shown that employees with impairment are up to 6 times less likely to have a work health and safety incident and are less likely to lodge a workers' compensation claim when compared to the average population. Okay? These reduced rates will lower your business's insurance because your average will go down. Therefore, your underwriters will give you a lower premium. It's amazing. Once again, okay, it is theorised that the reason for this can be attributed to the difficulty many people with impairment have in finding employment. When it is so hard to find employment, you're not going to risk your job by flaunting the rules, cutting corners, taking the piss. Okay? You're not going to. You're going to go to do the extra mile to make sure you retain that employment. Hope that makes sense to everybody. So let's move on to myth 5. People with impairment are less productive. Another one that isn't true. Fancy that. Studies show that when matched to a position that suits their ability, employees with impairment are as productive as their counterparts. Okay? It's true. You know, at the end of the day, people will try to do the jobs that they are good at. People will apply for those jobs that they know they can do well. Okay? As somebody who is restricted to a wheelchair, I am not going to go out there and apply to be a brickies labourer. Okay? There's no way I could do that. But when I match myself with a job that I can do, whether that be an entry-level position on a front desk, or in this case, being a presenter, okay, these are all roles that I can do. My productivity is equal with my counterparts. On top of that, people whose productivity is actually significantly reduced as a result of impairment may want to consider the supported wage system. Okay? With a supported wage system, eligible people with impairment can access a reliable process of productivity-based wage assessment to determine fair pay for fair work. This will be covered in a later session. Later in this session. Myth 6. Workers with impairment will not fit into my workplace. Absolutely not true. We are people. We are part of the community. We have loves. We have hates. We have passions. We follow sports teams. We like music. Okay? We have interests. We will always find a way. There is always a way to connect with people. There always is. And on top of that, studies show, in most cases, co-worker acceptance comes with awareness and observing that workers are competent and efficient in their job, regardless of impairment. You think about it. When somebody new starts your work, okay, all you care about, really, is that they can do the job well enough that it's not going to make more work for you. Why would it be any different for people with impairment? And on top of that, people with impairment, we make up around 20% of the Australian population, and the likelihood of clients and co-workers having a relative or a friend with an impairment is very high, which actually makes that connection a lot easier. And to top it all off, I love studies, I love research, okay, it is so good. Studies show that employer initiatives in hiring people with impairment can have positive bottom line results, can have increased staff morale, and community recognition as good corporate citizens. Okay? These are all amazing reasons to actually look at employing somebody with an impairment. So, final myth. Myth 7. If they don't work out, I cannot discipline or fire them because they have an impairment. Look, not true, okay? The reality is that employing a person with impairment is the same as any other worker, okay? You must establish clear performance expectations from the start, okay? If they are unable or unwilling to do their job, you can take further action as usual, okay? There are no special laws that prevent you from disciplining or terminating an employee who is unwilling to do their job. It is no different if somebody has an impairment, okay? So hopefully you guys have all taken something out of these myths and actually made you think twice or look at things in a slightly different way. Now, if you've just joined us, then I really encourage you, if you want to interact or you have any questions, to head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay? From there, you'll be able to join in the chat, because that is the only chat that we will actually be monitoring during this, because unfortunately I do not have the resource to monitor multiple streams. Whoops, let's carry on. All right, let's have a look at another reason why employing people with an impairment is great for your bottom line. And that is the amazing government subsidies that are available out there. So when employing a person with impairment, there are various opportunities depending on job seeker profiles and role hours. Okay? These are designed to offset training and other costs during their initial period of employment. These subsidies, they can be released in either a lump sum or flexible payment, and they're contingent on the award rates being paid for whatever particular role it is that they're doing, the minimum hours being worked as per the agreement, and the employee being registered with a disability employment service. Now, we'll be covering disability employment services in part 2 of the Tapping In webinar series. Really encourage you to log in for that one, because they are an amazing free service that, once you understand what it is they do, are invaluable. So really encourage you guys to book in for that one. But for now, let's have a look at the 4 options that are available when it comes to employment subsidies. The first subsidy is the wage subsidy. Okay, this is a $1,500 subsidy. Okay, the requirements are that the candidate will average a minimum of 8 hours over 13 weeks, with an intention of the employment going to 26 weeks. Okay, now when I say at least 8 hours a week, and it's the same with the other ones coming up, it's an average. Okay, so if your business is a feast or famine type affair, where one week somebody may work 30 hours and then not work at all the next week, it becomes averaged out over the time period. Okay, and if due to unforeseen circumstances the employment does not go further than the first 13 weeks, then you will still actually get your subsidy paid out. The next subsidy is the Wage Start subsidy. This is a $6,000 subsidy. Okay, and the requirements, okay, in this case is that the employee has to be under the age of 50 years old and has to be what is classified as a longer term unemployed job seeker, which means that they have been out of work and actively searching for work for the last 52 weeks or last year or longer. And they have to be employed for a minimum of 15 hours per week over a 26-week duration. Once again, the 15 hours per week, this is an average over the 26-week duration. Subsidy 3 is the Restart subsidy. This is the big one, okay? $10,000. The requirements, okay? The employee has to be over 50 years old. And, once again, has to be a longer term unemployed job seeker, so actively looking for work for the last year. And they have to be employed for a minimum of 20 hours per week over 26 weeks duration. Okay, once again, it's an average of 20 hours a week over the 26 weeks. And the very last subsidy is the supported wage system, which I alluded to earlier. And come on, paper, freshly printed note stuff. So this particular subsidy overall is more complicated, but in short, and as a general overview of it, okay, it revolves around the concept of fair pay for fair work. So it allows candidates who cannot perform all job requirements to receive a productivity-based wage and not disadvantage the employer financially. Okay, this is an assessment-based subsidy. Okay, so an independent assessor determines the gap between the actual and required or standard performance, so actual performance and required or standard performance, due to the worker's health condition or impairment. And then they have a look at the percentage of the hourly rate payable. For example, if it's determined somebody is producing work to 70% of the required standard, then the relevant award rate is applicable to that employee, but it's 70% per hour. Okay, so if the award is, let's make it easy, if the award is $20 an hour, okay, then that person would be getting paid at $14 an hour because they have come in at 70%. Is that right? Yeah, 70% of the rate. So how can employers access these subsidies? Look, if you jump online and search for disability employment service providers in your area and get in touch with one of them, okay? That is your best way of doing it. If you're unsure what a disability employment service provider is, I once again really encourage you to join in with tomorrow's webinar where we cover disability employment services. and we will explain what they are and what they do and the services they offer. Like I said, they are amazing resource. But I'll save that for tomorrow. All right, on to the final part of the session, or the final subject of the session. But before I do dive into it, once again, I really encourage you guys to jump on to 30footdrop.com.au/live if you have any questions, and interact, okay? Ask us anything, trust me, okay? I have been talking now to all sorts of audiences. I've got to say probably the most entertaining when it comes to questions has got to be high school students, because there ain't no filter. It's great. So, workplace modifications, what are they? Well, before I can really explain what workplace modifications is, I really need to explain what job access is, okay? Job access is the national hub for the workplace and employment information for people with impairment, employers and service providers, okay? This is fully funded by the Employee Employment Assistance Fund, okay? They offer financial assistance for workplace modifications that assist people with an impairment to gain meaningful long-term employment, okay? This is another amazing resource to tap into and to make use of, and can really be used to the employer's advantage if you are clever, if you're smart at what you're doing. So workplace modifications, okay? So through job access, okay, you can access subsidies and funds in order to assist the workplace to put together modifications and assistive technology and services, such as making adjustments to the physical workplace, modifications to work vehicles if required, any specialised equipment that is needed, information and communication devices, Auslan interpretive services, specialist services for employees with specific learning disorders and mental health conditions, disability awareness training for the workplace, and this includes deafness awareness, and mental health awareness and first aid training. These are all services that you can access through job access. Okay, as I said, they are an amazing resource and they can really help to boost your business's ability to be able to do business, or to be able to serve people with impairment. So the application process. As a note, most disability employment services will actually facilitate and arrange any assessments that are required. Okay, so if you're going through a disability employment service to get a new employee, they will often do all of this paperwork for you. But if you don't wish to go through them, which is fine, it's your own choice, okay, this is the process that you would go through. Okay, so first up, you would actually submit the application to the Employment Assessment Fund, Assistance Fund, or EAF, okay? The form itself is very easy to fill out. It's digital. It walks you through it. It tells you exactly what it needs. Okay, they've done a really good job of setting it up, and it is also Web Content Accessibility Guide 2.1 compliant as well for those that have communication needs. Okay. Once Job Access actually receives the application, they will assess the application and they'll have a look to make sure that it is going to be needed and that you're not taking the piss, pretty much. And if the application is successful, then Job Access will advise if the workplace assessment is required. So for some of the bigger ticket items that you can actually get through Job Access, they will actually have an independent assessor come out and let you know and actually have a look to make sure it is something that you need. So if the assessment is not required, Job Access will tell you that you can go ahead and purchase the goods and services and apply to get reimbursed. And if an assessment is required, then what they will do, Job Access will actually arrange a specialist to confirm the workplace changes. Okay, so this will actually go to them and they will send out a specialist. Now, if you're nimble, what you can do is when that assessor comes out to actually have a look at the workplace, if there's anything else that you need to have a look at or any other advice that you need on the workplace, make the most of them being there. They are a really great work resource. Now, before I go on to talk about funding caps, and the last step of that is if the assessor says yes, it is definitely needed, then once again you go ahead and purchase the goods and services, and you can get reimbursed by Job Access. Now, we've actually had our very first question come through of our live webinars. Thank you very, very much to whoever that was. And the question is there a minimum age for someone with a disability to apply for subsidies? Yes, there is. So it is the same as the employment laws, okay? And from memory, it is the age of 16. People can actually get employed. And so from that point, they can go through. But my advice would be to actually get a hold of a disability employment service to confirm that. I worked in disability employment services, but that was about 5 years ago now. So my advice would be to ask them, but I'm pretty sure you would be able to get it from the age of 16 onwards. I hope that answered your question. If you need clarification, go ahead and chuck it in the chat box again, but thank you very much for your question. First one. Okay. Carry on. Funding caps. So, funding caps apply. So, physical workplace adjustments through Job Access are capped at $30,000. Okay? Now, with these funding caps, and with these, with somebody coming in to do a major physical workplace adjustment, once again, you can be smart about it. Okay? So, for example, if you are getting an elevator installed, if there's anything else you need done in your workplace, whether that would be redoing bathrooms or something similar that you're having to do the refurb out of your own pocket, organise for it to be done at the same time that the builder's there. Therefore, you're not doubling up on call-out costs. Okay? It can really make a massive difference. Auslan has got 3 levels, and each of them have got different caps. So Auslan Level 1 interpreting is for work-related activities for employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment, including remote interpreting and real-time captioning. It's capped at $6,000 for every 12-month period. Auslan Level 2 interpreting is for job interviews and related activities, such as site visits, completion of tests, and information services for people who are deaf or have a hearing impairment. The funding for this is uncapped, okay, which is an amazing resource, and more employers should make use of it when they're actually looking at doing job interviews in order to give all potential employees a level playing field. Auslan Level 3, now this is the one that I love. I think this is an amazing one. Okay? Auslan Level 3 interpreting is to help co-workers receive training, in this case Certificate 2 in Auslan, to communicate with employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment and who use Auslan as their main method of communication. Okay? It is capped at $855. Now, if you actually think about this as an employer, not only are you gaining a massive employee, like a really great employee, someone who's going to be loyal and all the other reasons that we mentioned earlier, but also suddenly some of your staff members are actually getting training in Auslan. What better way to serve people? Okay, what better way, like what a value add that is. It's a really, really good way of going about it. Other funding caps. Disability awareness training. Okay, if you employ a person with a disability or impairment, you can apply for funding for disability awareness training for your workplace. Okay, specific for that person's impairment or disability. So this is capped at $1,500 for each employee with an impairment within every 12-month period. Okay, this is another great value add. Okay, quick plug, 30-foot drop, we do this. Okay, and what we'll try and do is we will try and work in general disability awareness training along with the specific training that is required in order for your other employees to be able to work with or to know how best to work with this other person. Okay, great value add. Let's face it, it's a really good value add when you look at it like that. So with that, that is all the information that we have today to share with you for this morning's session. Do we have any questions? I'm going to give people a couple of minutes to jump on and ask questions, and whilst we are doing that, I will actually just double check the minimum age for the subsidies, just to make sure that I have given the right information. Okay, so I will mute the microphone for about 5 minutes, and we'll get back into it. You can watch my interesting concentration face as I try and type and read. And we're back. So, we received another question. Thank you very much. But first, I want to go back to the original question about the minimum age for someone with a disability to apply for subsidies. So the working age laws in Western Australia can get a little bit complicated, but as a general rule, minimum age has to be 15. So that would, my initial thought would be, it would have to be at least 15 years old in order to apply for it. Now, often it is looking at things like apprenticeships and traineeships as well. But I really encourage you to get a hold of your local disability employment service. As I said, if you want more information on disability employment services, log on tomorrow. We've got a session on that. Now, for the second question, do people who apply to job access need written proof of disability or impairment? So, job access is part of the form. It actually has a section that requires to be filled out by a medical professional. So, whilst it is proof, I suppose you could call it, yeah, it is required to be filled out by a medical professional, whether that be an occupational therapist, physiotherapist, GP, or something similar. So you do need to provide some form of proof in order to access them. But that proof is often very easy to get. If you're going through a disability employment service and doing it, they will already have the proof anyway, and it will be a lot easier. But even if not, it is literally a trip to the GP, or if you have a OT who's attached to your business, getting them out. So with that, that is the questions that we have today. I want to thank you all very much for being part of this very first live stream or live webinar that we've done here at 30 Foot Drop. It's been a long time in the making, and I really hope you've enjoyed the product. I really do. Now, before you all go, I want to remind you that we do have a short survey that we would really appreciate being filled out. So the survey, you can find it at 30footdrop.com.au/live. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will find a series of buttons that have webinar, tapping in, part, whichever. And for this particular webinar, if you could please go to the one that says tapping in part 1 survey, that would be really great. It's 6 questions, it will take hardly any time, and it's invaluable for us to actually improve with. And don't forget that resources, okay, we have them on the website as well, at, once again, www.30footdrop.com.au. Okay, they're all there. Thank you very much for your attendance and for the questions that came through. Keep an eye on us on socials. We've got some really cool stuff coming up, and we have many, many more webinars. If you want to book in, head to Eventbrite. But with that, thank you very much once again for watching. Keep yourself safe, look after yourself, look after each other.